Please, someone, help. The words barely broke through the noise of the subway platform, trembling in the stale underground air. Claire Whitmore, 24 and exhausted from a double shift at the diner, froze mid-step. Around her, dozens of commuters streamed past, earbuds in, eyes down, rushing toward their own lives. But she heard him. An elderly man crumpled against a concrete pillar, his weathered face pale and twisted in pain. She shouldn't have been there at all. She'd taken the wrong train, gotten off 2 stops too early in an unfamiliar part of the city. But now, none of that mattered. Claire dropped to her knees beside him, her bag spilling across the grimy platform. His shirt was torn at the collar, and his breathing came in shallow gasps. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me? I'm here. You're not alone." His eyes, clouded with fear and confusion, found hers. My grandson. I was supposed to meet him." "Shh, it's okay. We'll find him, but first we need to get you help." Claire pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. She took off her jacket and folded it under his head, whispering reassurances as people continued to rush past, their faces blank, their hearts closed. 15 minutes felt like hours. The paramedics arrived, and Claire rode with him to the hospital, holding his weathered hand in both of hers. She didn't know why. Maybe because her own grandfather had died alone in a hospital 3 years ago, and she'd never forgiven herself for not being there. Maybe because kindness was the only currency that mattered when everything else fell away. His name was Walter Brennan, 68 years old, a heart condition he'd been ignoring for months because, as he later confessed, "I didn't want to burden anyone." 3 days later, Claire sat in a sterile hospital room watching Walter sleep. She'd visited every day after her shifts, bringing him books, conversation, and the kind of warm presence that hospitals rarely offered. She'd also tracked down his grandson through the contact list in Walter's old flip phone. When Garrett Brennan walked through the door, 33, sharp-suited, his face tight with worry, Claire stood to leave, but Walter's hand caught hers. "Stay," he said softly. "I want you both here." Garrett's eyes moved between them, confused but grateful. Over the next hour, Walter told his story. He'd built a business from nothing, construction, real estate, investments, until his name meant something in this city. But success had come at a cost. His late wife, missed birthdays, a grandson he barely knew. When his heart started failing, he'd decided to walk away from the wealth, to live simply, to test whether anyone would care about Walter the man, not Walter the millionaire. "And then you found me," he said, his gaze on Claire. "You didn't know who I was, you didn't want anything, you just saw me. Really saw me." Claire's throat tightened. Anyone would have. "No," his voice was firm, eyes glistening. "They didn't. Dozens of people walked by and they didn't." Weeks turned into months. Walter recovered, slowly but steadily. Garrett, shaken by how close he had come to losing his grandfather, began visiting regularly. Real visits, not the obligatory holiday appearances. They talked about the past, about regrets, about starting over. And Claire, who had never intended to become part of their story, found herself woven into it. One autumn evening, as golden light filtered through Walter's apartment windows, the three of them sat together over dinner. Simple pasta that Claire had made, laughter filling the spaces between words. "I've been thinking," Walter said, setting down his fork, "about what matters, about legacy." He looked at Garrett. I'm leaving the business to you, all of it, but not because I expect you to become me, because I trust you to do better." Garrett's eyes shone. "Grandpa, And Claire," Walter continued, turning to her, "I'm setting up a foundation for people who fall through the cracks, for moments like mine on that subway platform. I want you to help run it, if you'll have me." Claire's breath caught. "Walter, You're just the person who stopped when everyone else kept walking. That's not just anything. That's everything." She reached across the table, taking both their hands. Outside, the city hummed with a million stories, a million people rushing toward a million destinations. But here, in this quiet room, 3 souls had found something rarer than wealth: connection, understanding, the simple, profound gift of being seen. A year later, Claire stood on the same subway platform where it had all begun, now transformed into a community outreach hub bearing Walter's name. She watched volunteers hand out meals, offer medical checkups, provide warmth to those the city forgot. Garrett worked beside her, his expensive suits replaced by jeans and a genuine smile. Walter, healthier now but moving slower, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, "taking the wrong train that day?" Claire smiled, her eyes bright with tears she didn't bother hiding. "Every wrong turn in my life led me exactly where I needed to be." He nodded, understanding passing between them without words. Then softly he said, "You saved me that day, Claire. Not just my life, but my faith that kindness still exists in a world that's forgotten how to stop and see each other." She squeezed his hand. "You taught me that being lost sometimes means being found." Around them, the station hummed with movement, people rushing, always rushing. But in that moment, 3 souls stood still, proof that a single act of compassion could rewrite not just one story, but 3. That wealth meant nothing if your heart was bankrupt. That family wasn't about blood, it was about who stayed when you fell. "The world keeps moving," Claire whispered, watching a young woman help an elderly stranger with heavy bags. "But maybe we can teach it to pause, just long enough to see each other, really see each other." Walter smiled, his eyes crinkling with the kind of joy that money could never buy. "One kind heart at a time,"